Hello, everybody, and welcome to the constantly jumping and changing Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week is Tracie Harris. As you can see, the titles changed this week. There's a computer in the control room, and sometimes our titles get erased and we have to redo them from scratch in a hurry, and that's what happened this week. I don't know, there's like a weird coloring thing going on here on my head, too. So there's camera problems, mic problems. We're in our new time slot. Beginning this week, we're here from 3 to 4:30, supposedly every week for the next 4 months or so, and hopefully to continue after that. So for those of you who followed us around, thanks for joining. We are live. It's Sunday, June 10th, 2007. We are a live public access call-in program, and we'll have the number up for you shortly. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at 11 o'clock now at Ventana del Sol. That's a slight change due to the shifting times of our television program. So it's from 11 to 1 at Ventana del Sol. Except for the first Sunday of the month, we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. The lectures begin at, oh boy, I do this wrong every time, 12. Go for noon. I can't remember if we're starting at noon or 12:30 right now, but we'll go for 12. We'll get more information up. And I'll correct that next week once I get good information. We had to shuffle some things around because they moved. It's 12:15, I've just been told. So most of our events are back on schedule, are back on track. And as usual, after this program's over, we're on until 4:30. We'll be going to Threadgills again. Last week we went to Dog and Duck because we were on kind of in the afternoon. But today we're returning to Threadgills. We'll be down there around 5, maybe a little bit after. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us, as long as you're not coming down to preach or proselytize or provoke us. We'll be happy to have you come down there. There's no membership requirements. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio program called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. You can find out more about this at nonprofitsradio.com. We will be live again that date. Is it right? Is it the 16th? It sure is. This coming Saturday, June 16th, 2007, we'll be live again from 2 p.m. Central. That's 1900 Universal Time, I think, if we did the calculations correct earlier. Somebody will probably write in and tell me I'm wrong about that. That's fine, too. That program isn't a live call-in program, but you can participate live. We run an IRC chat service along with it, and we've built up a community of people who've even developed a drinking game for every time we say asshat, they'll take a drink. But we try not to encourage that too much, but they may be drinking water, which would be good. After sitting out in the heat yesterday, I'm a big fan of drinking lots and lots of water, but I'll get back to that here in a minute. In addition to the regular weekly meeting or lecture, there's also a board meeting that takes place on the second Sunday of every month. That's for the board of directors of the ACA. That meeting occurred today, and so we'll be waiting for the second Sunday of next month again. For all board members, just as a reminder, and I'll continue to try and get it right since I got the time wrong last week. We're going to continue to meet at 10 a.m. For ACA members, if you haven't been down for a board meeting, you're welcome to come down and sit in and participate and do whatever you need to do to talk to board members, to bring up issues for us to discuss. We've assigned some new committee members this morning and changed some things around. We're looking forward to doing good things this year. Lots more activities. One of the things that's happened is that we're going to start having more weekly activities. We have a happy hour every Thursday. That begins around 7 o'clock at the Dog and Duck Pub at 17th and Guadalupe. And now, beginning this coming Wednesday, we're going to start a Wednesday night kind of social event. We'll be going to Thor's Hammer this Wednesday, which is up by McNeil, Spicewood Springs, north on 183. We're going to be joining the Center for Inquiries. They have a board game or gaming night there every Wednesday. We'll be joining them this Wednesday as opposed to last Wednesday, which is what I announced last week. We've had to shuffle all kinds of schedules around. So this Wednesday, the 13th, we'll be joining them down there for board games. Any atheists or any of the ACA members are welcome to come down and join us. And if you're a guest and interested in possibly joining, you can come down and talk to us about that there as well. The following Wednesday, we'll be going bowling. There's more information about that on the website. The Wednesday after that, we're going to play pool. And we've got kind of this rotating schedule of events for find out what people are interested in doing. And you know, we don't necessarily have to do anything that's super active, but we're promoting as much community events and activities as we possibly can. For more information about the Atheist Community of Austin, you can visit our website, www.atheist-community.org. The website for the nonprofits is radio.com, I've already given. Also, there's atheist-experience.com, which is the website for this program. You can get to all of them from the website right there at the bottom of your screen right now. There's also a frequently asked question page of the website. If you don't get through on the telephone today, or if I end up redirecting you, there you can go and find a number of frequent answers to questions we get asked all the time. What's an atheist? What's an agnostic? What do you believe? What don't you believe? Why? A lot of those answers are there, including some common arguments that we're presented with by people of different theistic beliefs, and our responses to those. And as long as we're talking about kind of responding to apologetics, I'll also take this opportunity to promote ironchariots.org, which is a counter-apologetics wiki that Russell Glasser and some of the other myself and some of the other people, fans of nonprofits and participants in nonprofits have put together. There's a good discussion forum there, and also a lot of good information. If you search through for common arguments or people or apologists, I've done some deconstruction of Ray Comfort's Way of the Master series, and there's also some other discussions there about common arguments, problem of evil, the ontological argument, whatever. That's all there. You can email us with any questions if you don't get through on the phone today, or if you didn't want to. You can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, all the co-hosts, some of the people behind the scenes, and there are a number of other email addresses for more contact information, information about the ACA, membership, anything like that. You can go to the website, and there should be a contact listing there for you to be able to get in touch with the people you need to. Yesterday, we went down and had a booth set up at the Pride Festival here in Austin. Had a great time. It was disgustingly hot, but fun. And we drank lots of water, met a lot of cool people, had a bunch of people stop by the booth. Some of the people who've been watching the show, calling into the show, stop by to talk to us, thank us for the show, or comment, or have a good discussion. It was great to meet everybody. We had a good time as always. And one of the things that we had to kind of repeat a number of times is, why would atheists have a booth at this gay, lesbian, transgender? What relevance is there? I mean, you guys just don't believe in God. That's it. So why would you bother? And that's a good point, because all atheism is a lack of belief in a God, and it doesn't go any further. But our group does go further. Our mission, the mission of the ACA, is to support the atheist community. And one of the things that involves is, obviously, we have some members who are gay, but there's this issue of equal rights that's very important, and we consider many of these issues, especially same-sex marriage, to be First Amendment issues. More often than not, there are many First Amendment issues wrapped up in it with regard to separation of church and state. Perhaps not completely, but it's important enough, and we're down there along with a number of other organizations to support human rights, equality. And as I mentioned yesterday, there was somebody who stopped by the booth to interview us, to ask us, what was going on. And I hate to say that we have a common enemy, because that phrasing isn't very good, but I think it's fair. We have a common enemy not in religious people. I have no problem with religious people, or your religion doesn't necessarily say whether or not you are a sensible, reasonable, fair-minded person. I'd say that if there was a common enemy, or something that could be viewed that way, it'd be more along the lines of the extreme religious right, which seems to want to promote their beliefs regardless of anybody else's rights or freedoms. In that sense, I think it's fair to call them an enemy, because from my point of view, they're an enemy of freedom, they're an enemy of equality, they're an enemy of inclusiveness, they're an enemy of human rights, and I think that's kind of fair. And while some people have characterized atheism, especially with this new popular heyday of atheism, as the new closet, I don't know that that's necessarily an accurate analogy. But certainly there are some First Amendment issues, and perhaps a sense of camaraderie about who is doing their best to marginalize your rights. And I think there's a good chance for cooperation. And if nothing else, it's fun. It's a good day out at the park with lots of good music and some interesting folks, and we enjoyed going down there, and I fully expect us to continue going down there. It's two or 3 years in a row for us. So had a good time.
Good.
How you doing?
Okay.
We're going to continue where we left off with this brainy, heady consciousness fluffiness.
That's correct. And it is fluffy. So it is the fluffiness half today.
It's fuzzy logic.
Yeah. The first thing I wanted to start with is I had one thing I wanted to correct and one thing I wanted to clarify about what I said last time.
Mm-hmm.
There was a experiment by Benjamin LeBay that I talked about for a long time, and it had to do with the relay of information from the brain to the conscious mind and
Right.
then to the body. And I'm not going to go too far into it, but just to summarize, they put electrodes on people's heads, and then they gave them a command to move their fingers. There was a recorded activity in the brain, followed by a conscious awareness of the will to move the finger, and then the finger was moved. And what it appears to indicate is that your brain starts the act before you're even conscious that the act is starting, so that consciousness is actually secondary to the beginning of the action, that it's not consciousness and then you begin to act and then you act. It's you begin to act, you become consciously aware you're beginning to act, and then you act. And it's not, the experiment itself is not without criticism, but that was just something that we focused on. But one of the things I had said, I had read so much information leading up to that program, and I'm definitely not a neurologist, so it was a lot of information on a lot of different experiments. And one thing I got confused about, I had said that Benjamin LeBay used people who had electrodes implanted in their brain in order to help them with brain trauma, and that was incorrect. He used external electrodes on normal
Right.
brained people. And the other thing I wanted to clarify is that we got a call in, and I wanted the caller at the time when he was talking, I wasn't sure if what he was insinuating was correct or not, and later I went and looked it up, and I just want to clarify. The caller himself just seemed to be talking about the model of like lower and higher brain, and how to him it seemed to be an intuitively sensible thing to think that you might begin to act before you are consciously aware you act, because we have a higher and lower cortex. Now, he didn't come right out and say that he believed that the impulse to act was a lower cortex function, but just that from an evolutionary standpoint, it would make sense that we develop actions before we develop conscious awareness of those actions.
Right. It may provide a good benefit to be
Right.
reactionary, and so I mean, we work
Right.
very hard to be reasonable, rational, logical as much as possible. That's when you have time to analyze things. There are certain times when reacting and reacting correctly and quickly is essential.
Right. And while that it very well may be the reason for why we have developed, if this experiment is correct and if its indications are correct, that may have something to do with why we've developed this way. However, I want to make it really clear that in the experiment, they only recorded impulses from the cerebral cortex. So the initial impulse, the conscious awareness, and the impulse to actually act were all a higher cortex function. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that regardless of why we may or may not be modeled a certain way, this particular experiment indicated that all three impulses occur in the part of our brain that we normally think of as higher thinking.
Great.
Okay.
And that, but before you get into that, that kind of sidetracks me to something real quick that I've been
Go
wanting to
for it.
address. If in fact you find that we've made a mistake, please email us and let us know.
Yeah.
I love finding out, well, I don't love finding out that I'm wrong. I like when I'm told that I'm wrong and when people demonstrate that this is true, because I actually care about what's true and what's right. And I don't want to give out bad information here, and so we'll come on and correct it. That's how we really learn. I mean,
Right.
Many times we'll come to conclusions, and you'll learn more by finding out that your conclusion was false. And I'm talking about that as well. If we make a factual mistake, or Tracie misrepresents something, or I do, yeah, that's good information to get. But if we make a fundamental mistake, if some flawed logic has led us down, some rabbit trail, I'd like to know that too. And I realize that the majority of the theistic audience is sitting out there saying that that's exactly what we've all done in order to become atheists. They're convinced that we've made some mistake in understanding or some failing of logic, that God is just so obvious. I mean, how could you possibly deny it? And, well, if you think you can make that case, please do so. I'll be happy to find out that I'm wrong about that as well. So far, not so much. So we left off, we talked a little bit about, what makes me me, and where
Right.
does my consciousness come in, but we
Right.
didn't quite get to
Religious
discussions,
implications.
religious
Right.
implications. So
And it's I guess it's a little bit removed. Religion and consciousness, I think it does acknowledge consciousness, but in a lot of ways it sort of evades that issue, or to some people that are religious, it may be a complete non-issue, and to other people, it may be really central. It just depends on how they're looking at it. Ego is mainly what is considered in religion. Different religions look at that, the conscious awareness or the idea of I or me, and what happens to me, and how did I get here, and where will I go after I die? It's all
Right.
about me. Religion is very egocentric in some
And
ways.
the idea that you are, in many cases, a special creation,
Right.
which is kind of a projection of your
Which,
ego.
and again, it totally depends on the religion, and sometimes it depends on the individual adherent within the religion itself,
Right.
because they won't all agree. When I look at Christianity and mainly Christianity and Islam have a kind of dualistic perspective that may or may not be unique in higher religion, but I view them as differently this is a very general perspective. Again, individuals can be very different. But there is this idea that in Judaism, you've got the Genesis story where everything is good. God creates it and it's all good. There's nothing wrong with it. And then later, man develops, he acquires the knowledge of good and evil according to the story, and that's when everything breaks into a dualistic existence. And so at that point, it's hard to say, depending on the Christian, I mean, you could interpret that as with his knowledge came an enhanced perspective of the world as dualistic, whereas it was all the same stuff, but
Right.
now he's seeing it as good or bad
Right.
instead of seeing it as all good. And then there's another view of it, which would be that he actually introduced evil, so that now you actually had something there that you didn't have before, so that you had all good, and then he actually created evil, which then manifested in many different ways.
Part of this you see among some fundamentalists, they will talk about how even though the verse said that it was good, they'll say, well, he didn't say it was perfect. But there is this ideal of perfection, perhaps within the Garden of Eden, and they'll claim that the animals were all vegetarians and so was everybody else. With the idea of the lion laying down with the lamb, they were just happy and they ate grass. And I really think that's a lot of work, because after a couple of your creations have eaten this fruit and discovered the ability to tell the difference between good and evil, now you've got to rework everything.
Right.
And either that's when you gave the lion those really nasty, pointy, vicious canine teeth, or they were always there and you had just been an ass and made it really difficult for them to eat the herbs,
Right.
So which one was it?
Right. I mean, you can get into a real literalist interpretation where you're saying that, there were no tsunamis, and then after he ate the fruit, then there were tsunamis.
Yeah.
But all it really says is that he gained knowledge.
Right.
So that knowledge that he gained was, according to the Genesis story, the same knowledge as God when it came to discerning between good and evil. And God said, now he's become like us, and he can tell the difference between good and evil. And what do we do with this? And well, the first thing he does, of course, is take away the tree of life so that people have no shot at eternal existence, because that would make them gods. But you have that perspective of dualism. And most of the religions that we think of as popular world religions have a concept of dualism, but they all have a different concept of what is dualism and why does dualism exist. To the Christian, dualism exists primarily because of Adam acquiring knowledge in Eden. That's
Right.
what created the dualistic perspective. And so then you have, but then I think I don't say most Christians, and I understand that there may be some that don't adhere to this. Most Christians have a very literal dualistic perspective. They will say, this event is an evil event, and this event is a good event. This is good, this is evil, this is good, this is bad, this is light, this is dark. And that this really exists. Like in their mind, an evil thing, it really exists, and it is inherently an evil thing, instead of it being that I have a perspective of it as evil.
Right.
It's not that I view it as evil, it's that the thing is evil, and I'm just acknowledging that. That's the view I see most often.
That it's as obvious that it's evil as that it's black or blue.
Right.
Or
Well, I
red.
mean, you talked about the Gay Pride Fest.
Right.
Okay. And there are, among some of these Christians, I'm going to use this as an example, when they're, for example, the Christians who are anti-gay, and they're not all anti-gay, but the ones that are, they view this as an inherently evil act. And then it's not that I perceive it as evil because of my values.
Right.
It's that the act is evil, and God has given me the knowledge that this act is evil, and so now I abhor the act because it's an evil act.
Right.
Not because I don't view it as evil, because I was told to view it as evil. It is evil, and I've just been made aware of that.
Right.
And so it's sort of a, where does the evil originate from? The thing externally, or from my view of it? And most of the time in Christianity and in Islam, you have this idea that the thing itself is bad, and it's not my perspective, it's God's perspective, and he says it's bad, and so the thing is bad, and it's not about how I'm viewing it. This is sharply contrasting other religions like Buddhism and Taoism. They're really different. Taoism has the perspective that dualism is something that is created by the perspective, that if you don't view it as right or wrong, or you don't view it as light or dark, it's not inherently dark. What makes it dark is the way that we perceive light. And so when something is dark, it's because our brain and our eyes see it a certain way, and we have a range that we see, which is from the very bright to the very dark to the blackness, and you see anything on that range, and at some point you're going to call it dark.
Right.
And so they see things as just being things. It's like none of this really has any meaning or any perspective to it. It's just that we have perspective, and so we make these labels, and we create a dualistic view of the universe. And in their, ultimately what they're saying is that there's no difference, you can't differentiate, well, no, I'm not going to say that. There is no inherent differentiation between things, it's just a mental perspective. They're viewing it as if, like for example, this table and a bowl of water, it's not that the things themselves, they wouldn't say that like structurally they're not different, they understand that. But what they're saying is that what makes them discernibly different is your mind and not the thing. Your mind creates, and we talked about models last time, that the mind creates models of everything. It creates a model of water, it creates, and then you have this physical perspective of it, that you feel the water and it's fluid. And if it didn't feel fluid, if it wasn't about the way I feel, then there wouldn't be a difference between the table and the water. It's just, this is how I perceive. That's how they view this.
Right.
And the Buddhists have a similar view in that they tend to understand that there's, to them they look more at the practical implications of things that you like and things that you don't like, things that cause you distress, things that don't cause you distress, things you like. And their view of it is more of a how I view things or how I perceive things. It has a direct effect on how happy I am. So if I view something as negative, the more negative I view it, or the more I dwell on a negative thing, the more unhappy I'm likely to be. Whereas if I perceive things in a more healthy perspective, if I try to look at it from a less, if I don't stress myself over things that are concerning to me, overly so, then I will suffer less in life. And to them, there's this ego that is created primarily composed of thought. And so they have this idea that when you silence your thoughts, your ego dissipates more and more until eventually you can rid yourself of ego altogether over a long period of time. And to them, that's ultimately their goal, is to lose the self, the idea of self and the ego, and to not have any sort of thought going on, any sort of desire, any sort of thought is, not what they're going for. Whereas you have this other perspective that we're more used to in the West of ego going on forever. Like we have the idea that when I die, I want my ego to go on forever. That's what Christianity is about. The ego exists for eternity. Whereas Buddhism says, the ego is really not something to celebrate, and it's kind of something that can be a real pain in a lot of ways, and it's probably best to just lose it if you can. And so they have this idea that you eventually die and then there is no ego.
And for the record, I disagree with them.
Okay.
But, we pick on, Christianity being the most popular religion and several others. I think if there's a single religion that I probably don't have too much objection to, it would probably be Buddhism. But I don't see the justification for the claim that you're necessarily better off without ego, without thought, without that because, for example, I can look at things and maybe it is true that my particular perception of something it kind of dictates how I view it, or maybe as a result of how I view it. But I see differences between things, and I see differences between actions, and I see that there are actions which I would call evil or bad or less good, and I don't think trying not to focus on those or focusing your attention elsewhere is necessarily the solution to that. I mean, there was a great T-shirt at yesterday's Pride. There was a lot of good T-shirts at yesterday's Pride Fest, but I think my favorite one somebody had on was one that says, "Silence helps no one," or "Silence saves no one." This notion that, and I think that kind of ties in with, perhaps not focusing so,
Right.
and I'm not saying spend your life focused on the negative. Nobody wants to do that.
Well, and I don't want to misrepresent this to say that what they're saying is that I should blind myself to anything that's harmful. I mean, the whole point to Buddhism was to attempt to alleviate suffering.
Sure.
So they acknowledge immediately that suffering exists, and if you're alive, you're potentially suffering. They're not saying that life is suffering, but they are saying that anything that lives will eventually encounter something unpleasant, such as illness or death or trauma, and they know that this will occur. They do believe in alleviating it when they encounter it. So if I can help you and I don't help you, that would be to them not a sin, but it would be an incorrect action to not help somebody that needs help that I can help. But at the same time, they do seem to equate the whole of the ego as something that you need to lose this and lose all desire and eventually not exist. And it's the same with Hindu. The Buddhists call non-existence nirvana, and the Hindus refer to it as moksha. I know there are a few Christians that I've spoken to about it that have a very difficult time, I think, with the idea that a person would adhere to a particular religion or a particular philosophy or belief where the ultimate goal is non-existence. I think it's very hard for them to comprehend why would a Buddhist go and live, and a lot of times they endure a lot of mentally, I would say far more mentally taxing exercises than we do here in the West. There are people that are much devoted, like they'll do things that you just don't see as often. Like with the meditation, we don't have anything quite like that in the West. Most of the time when you're...
Scientology. Those folks will sit in a chair and stare at each other all day long without trying to do it without blinking. That type of thing, I think...
That would qualify.
Yeah.
I mean, that would definitely
Certainly
qualify.
stressful.
But I think as far as like the mainstream, most of us don't have that experience.
Right.
There's very few. Now maybe you have, like with Muslim, I know they have like fasting, which would be something that would qualify, like this sort of a mentally or physically challenging thing that you would do in order to help train yourself or learn greater control, either mentally or physically. And for the most part, I think the general Christianity that is practiced here in this country doesn't really require that. I'm not going to say that there aren't Christians who fast, or that there aren't Christians who may submit themselves to certain things. And I know that in the East they'll do like self-flagellation and things like that. So you do see it. It's just not as common and not as rigorous as happens in some Eastern cultures, including Muslim. The Hindus have the idea that everything is an illusion, that you have a front to reality, so that what you see isn't really real. It's just sort of a front to a spiritual reality. And this is a little bit different than the Taoist perspective, which just says there's something there, but it's not what I perceive. What I perceive is just sort of what I perceive. And what's there, I really can't perceive it any other way, so I don't know what it is outside of what I perceive. But they don't put any kind of, most of them aren't putting spiritual significance behind that. They're just saying, whatever it is, I don't know. This is what I perceive, though. Whereas the Hindus would say there's a spiritual existence behind the illusion. But when they ultimately die, they don't become part of that. They just sort of dissipate. And but then when you have with Christianity is you have this real separation. You've got the dualism that hits again, where there is like a very separate physical, for the most part. I mean, I have heard different mostly older Christian philosophies that talk about the idea of like the parallel spiritual universe that coexists with the physical. But most Christians, I think, currently don't hold that idea. They have this, that there's a physical realm and there's a spiritual realm, and that they're very separate, that you have heaven and earth, and that it's, the realms themselves are not interrelated in any way, except that I guess God would be integrated into this realm, and depending on the Christian belief, there might be demons or Satan also integrated into this realm. But there's not a spiritual mug that backs up this physical mug, which in some older Christian philosophies that was the case, and in Hindu there is this duplicated spiritual existence, and then there's this illusory physical thing in front of it that doesn't count. It's just like this illusion that you live in. So there's all of these things are connected to the ego because they connect to how a person perceives that they're viewing things. Whether they think what they're viewing is real is not real, whether they think that what's really there is really conceivable, or if it's restricted by my ego view of it, or can I understand it at all?
A lot of this, and I'll happily lump myself in with the various Western people who find a lot of this baffling, because to me, what I see from a lot of these, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, whatever, is this idea that you're trying to eliminate the self, which I don't necessarily see as a good thing. I kind of like myself and would probably prefer to keep going, and continue to exist. But it seems very much to me, one of the big things that we end up, and we'll probably talk about the fundamentals of epistemology before. The people who were there this morning know that, we need to address that. How do you define belief? How do you define knowledge? How do you go about developing some kind of methodology or heuristic for determining fact from fantasy? And what I seem to see, and I realize that my understanding of these religions is less than, but you enter one of these knowing that the ultimate beliefs are, or the goal or whatever, for example, is to come to, let's say, the realization that there's reality isn't what you think it is. And it seems that to me that if you go into something knowing what your eventual goal and outcome is, that I'm going to keep meditating and studying and focusing until I come to the realization that reality is not what it appears to be, that all you're really engaged in is a form of forced self-delusion over time. You've set up a goal to achieve, so you know in advance what your realization is, and you're trying to continue to brainwash yourself until such time as you realize what you were told you were supposed to realize. And while it may in fact be the truth, I don't see that as any kind of good footing on which to base your life. If we would like to find out about reality, if we would like to describe it as best we could, to define parameters, to learn about all the wonderful things in this universe, which, maybe there aren't any wonderful things in the universe, maybe the universe doesn't exist at all, but if we want to actually find out and determine the difference between fact and fantasy, I think one of the key things would be not to set a goal that is a conclusion you're supposed to reach. For example, let's say our goal was just realization of the true nature of the universe, that is a worthy goal. And I think that's one that most all of us would agree with to some extent. I want to find out as much as I can. I don't need to dress it up all fancy. We'll call it realization of the true nature of the universe if you want. But if I go into it saying, I want to come to the realization of the true nature of the universe, and I already know that my eventual realization should be that the universe is not what it appears, that there's a spiritual realm behind what we see, or that we're being presented with an illusion that what we see isn't real, then I'm leading the evidence instead of letting the evidence lead me. I don't know.
No, I can understand what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying. The reason that I'm bringing this up, though, on the topic of consciousness is that I do believe that what religion encounters is very much like what we're going to get into in a little bit, which is the drug-induced ego distortions and ego death. And what I think occurs is that I believe that people have the models of consciousness that we're looking at currently that are indicating that that our brain models things, that we do seem to have this ego that is separate from a conscious level of action, and I don't want to call it thought because that seems to tie into consciousness, but that there's brain activity going, whether you're conscious of it or not. And there's the conscious part of it is beginning to look like something that is a manifestation of the physical part of it that just sort of puts out this consciousness, and then you become consciously aware of something.
Right. It's one thing that is kind of hard to observe, and it's certainly difficult to be really self-aware of what's likely to be going on. For example, obviously, I didn't have anything prepared to respond to what Tracie was talking about. So all of that I just said kind of was ad lib, off the cuff, whatever. But I didn't have to sit here and consciously think through how to put together sentences or how to put together thoughts. It's the result of kind of what my brain does and what all of our brains do on a constant basis. And that is instead of, I don't mean that as a demonstration of how good I can ad lib or come to a conclusion. What it is a kind of a demonstration of not only what our brains can do, but how little we're actually able to perceive what it's doing,
right.
Even with things that we would normally consider conscious, like communication.
Right. That's why I think, though, that when these people when we encounter something that is different than what we're used to, like if a person is capable of meditating and closing off thought to any great extent, they're going to encounter something that is very different than what they encounter on a day-to-day basis with their eyes open, walking around.
Yeah, you've intentionally sought out something different.
Right. And to see that, hey, wait, there is this other mode of mental existence outside of what I'm seeing in my crowded every day-to-day mind, I think puts these people into a situation where they now have to try to describe things that we don't have descriptions for.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit last time I was on. Someone called in and talked about the vocabulary being, falling really short of being able to describe much of this, because now that we're getting into a scientific venue that's looking at the same concept of what is it that is the ego, and what constitutes the ego, and what constitutes conscious thought, and is the brain producing this? When you have people that are encountering, wow, I went into some state where I felt like I wasn't there anymore, and I don't understand that. And so you end up with either a religion, or you end up with somebody posting online that they did some drug and they don't know what happened to them. And they use language, which I've brought some, I don't know if we'll get to it, I hope so. They use language that is extremely, extremely parallel to religious language.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my theory on why it is so. I just think that when people hit things that they don't understand and they're trying to describe it, and to them it's kind of so far removed from their daily experience.
But you also, we see, and before we get to the drug stuff, we'll go ahead and take a call or two real quick. But you're talking about the failures of having a good language or a good basis with which to describe this. You see that in the description itself, where it's like, I did this and I had this experience where I felt that I no longer existed.
Right.
So you have something that is in direct contradiction, where you're definitely experiencing something, but what you're experiencing is perceived as your own in existence, and what or non-existence, and what may actually, and we don't have a good language to describe it. It may simply be, a different brain state or a different perception, because we perceive things through our senses, and our brain tries to make sense of it. I mean, reality doesn't happen out here. Reality really does kind of happen in here, but it's not. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're each individually inventing a unique reality that is not necessarily consistent with somebody else's. And I think that's one of the keys where we try to find out, when we're working towards our realization of the true nature of the universe, find out where our perceptions of things coincide.
Right.
If you and I both are agreeing this is a pen, and everybody starts agreeing this is a pen, and we can all describe it consistently and repeatedly, which is one of the key elements of science. Consistent results.
Right.
So.
The problem, though, enters in to me when that particular pen that you just had in your hand, that pen links to different neurological pathways in my head than in yours.
Yes.
So I look at the pen and I make a neural model, and my mind immediately starts making connections with other things. And since I have an entire lifetime of different experience than you, I've got a whole different neurological connection regarding that pen and what that pen means to me.
Yeah, because like, for example, when you first see a pen, one of the first things you're likely to think of, being an artist, is, how good of a pen is it? Does it write well? Does it draw a good line? Would it be good for, creating comic? That type of thing is going to come to your mind more quicker than is mine. And mine is it good for spinning? Okay. If I've got it in my hand, can I fiddle with it and actually spin it without dropping it? And that's kind of a funny look at the difference of perception. And I don't think it touches on the level that we're really talking about. But it does about different experiences.
It does touch on, though, the models, the mental models. And just real quickly before you go to calls, I wanted to use a couple of examples.
Sure.
People are just immediately prone to symbolism. Everything is a symbol. I mean, there's
we have an attempt to see significance.
Right, and this, like I was just saying, this pen means something completely different to me than it does to you, even though we're looking at the same pen. And we both agree that it's blue and it writes. But what this pen signifies to me, what I might, for example, if I go to sleep tonight and I dream of this pen, I'm going to dream of it in an entirely different context than someone else might. It means something more to me, and I may not even be aware of the things that I connect this pen to. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up was when they had the University of Virginia students who were killed not long ago in that the shooting tragedy. Immediately, I couldn't believe how fast it was. They had erected symbols of the dead students. They had put up 32 rocks on the campus to represent the students.
Right.
And then they rang, they had 32 bells that they rang in memory of the students, as another symbol of these students who had died. There were 32 seconds of silence. There were so many symbols applied, things that represented the students, that everybody could walk by and say, oh, those are the stones that represent the people, or those are the bell chimes that represent the people,
right.
or that every one of those seconds was a person. And it's just amazing to me the degree to which we can symbolize things and the degree to which we do symbolize things, and it goes beyond what we're even aware of. People have phobias, which are things that they have symbolized into huge fears, and they don't even recognize what's actually behind the phobia. They'll be afraid of a spider. They don't know why. Well, it's not the spider. The spider signifies something that is really frightening to the person, and it probably has something to do with nothing to do with spiders.
Right.
Unless, of course, they've been, got bitten by a brown recluse when they were
Sure.
8 years old or something. But if you've never had a traumatic event with a spider and you develop a fear of spiders, you're probably reacting to something, a mental stressor that's occurring somewhere else that you're embodying in the spider. You create the symbol of it, and it becomes a phobia. There was a movie called Spirited Away about a little girl, and I don't know if you saw it or not. It was like a Japanese film. And one of the things that really struck me in the movie is that the little girl, she's riding on a dragon, and she begins to recollect an event where she was in a river when she was little, and the river was carrying her away. And she lost her shoes in the river or something like that. But in the event where she's riding the dragon, it reminds her of being in that river. And in the movie, it turns out that the dragon is actually the spirit of the river. But I think everyone has been in a situation where you're doing something and it reminds you of another event or another, something else that has occurred, and you think, oh, that reminds me of this other thing. And maybe it's not even related. Sometimes you see something and it is related. There's an obvious relation, but sometimes something else will happen and you get really sad, and maybe you think, yeah, that's really sad. That event reminds me of this other thing here that made me sad. And the two events, the only thing they have in common is that they made you feel the same way, but the events themselves have no connection other than that.
That's never happened to me. I've never been talking about one thing and then thought of something else and then completely derailed the conversation to speak about that other thing for another 15 minutes. That's never, ever happened.
Phone calls.
And certainly hasn't happened on TV. Thanks, everybody. We're gonna go to phone calls now. For those of you who are waiting, I'll get to you in just a second, I promise. As a reminder, the phone line, the number's up on the screen now, as long as you're watching live. If you're not watching live, you won't be seeing the telephone number. If you find out the number through some other method, please don't call it, because especially now that we're bouncing around, you might call the studio at a time when we're not on the air at all. Our current time slot, which we're hoping to stick with, the one we've got today, we're on from 3 p.m. Central to 4:30 p.m. Central. And after the program's over, we're going to go down to Threadgills just like we used to, only now instead of getting down there around 6:30 or so, we're going to get there around 5 or 5:15. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. We're live, as I said. It's Sunday, June 10th, 2007, and we're going to go ahead and take some callers real quick. I think we got Grant.
Yes, hi.
How you doing, Grant?
Oh, pretty good. Is my voice too loud? Do I need to turn my cell phone down?
Yeah, you should probably turn down the volume on your TV.
It's already muted, sir.
Okay.
Okay, well, I have two questions, one for you and one for Trent. Real brief. Okay. And the first one was for you, Matt.
Okay.
And that is, what is your definition of the word illusion? When you say the word illusion in a sentence...
You're breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit. Definition of what word?
Illusion?
Illusion.
Illusion?
Yeah, when you say the word illusion in a sentence on your program, what is it? What is the word? What's the definition of that word to you? What is
Definition.
You
of
said I used
illusion?
illusion in the sentence in the program?
when you say it?
When you say illusion, he's asking, what is that? How do you define illusion?
Well, I don't know. It depends on what context it's used in.
Well, say that what you said today about, to Buddhists, like all things are illusion, perhaps, or...
I'm referring to their claim of illusion as being that we are being deceived, not necessarily by a conscious entity, but in somehow or another, in some fashion, we are inherently deceived, that we are unable to see the true state of it. And that, I think, is definitionally an illusion, where whatever the true state of something is, you're being deceived or presented with some other state, some other description. So I'd say that's...
In other words, it's a lie. Illusion is a lie.
Well,
It's promoted by the Christianity, which is an illusion that there is such and so, because it can't be proven experiment. Or it's not really real reality, material reality.
Yeah,
you can experiment and prove scientifically, okay?
I don't know that I'd necessarily say lie, because in some cases you're presented with illusions that you create yourself. Optical illusions occur in your own brain.
Oh, okay.
And there's not a necessarily...
Difference between physical and verbal and mental illusion.
Well, I don't want to say lie unless there's obvious intentional deception by some intelligent entity.
I don't want to go into that area.
That's fine.
Deep. But basically, second question, Buddhism, their concept of illusion is obvious. You stated it. Hindu, you stated that, or Tracie has. Christianity, do they have a definition for that there's such a thing as an illusion? I think they do. It's only as presented by so-called Satan, who gave Jesus hallucinations about towns and crap, in certain verses. Well, let's go past that and go to Tracie. Tracie, I have one question for you, and that's it.
Okay.
What did the study you cited show as the your anatomical locus of consciousness, or did it find that?
Like, are you asking me where is the consciousness located?
Where is this so-called locus of consciousness located neuroanatomically in the brain? Did it find that out or come close to where it was? I mean, what was the basis for the experiment? I turned on a little late.
Okay, there's a problem with the phone where the quality's messing up and it's really hard to understand, and I apologize for that. You're asking if she's discovered in any of the research a physical...
No, the study she cited.
A particular study she cited, if it
probably.
developed...
What you've been talking about today, about how...
Right.
Yeah.
And
what
the
was the
question...
purpose of that study?
The focus?
The purpose.
Oh, the purpose was to try and determine, they were just trying to determine, like, at what point you're aware before you do an action. So they were giving the people a command, and then they were seeing how much, like, what kind of activity occurred in the brain prior to the person executing the command. And what they found, or what they claim to have found, is that the brain activates, milliseconds before the person has conscious awareness. Once the conscious awareness activates, you have milliseconds, and then you actually commit the action. So that creates an issue where there's a question now of, do you have the brain that is causing the impulse to act, and then the conscious awareness is secondary to that? That would be very different than the model most people have, myself included, of I am consciously aware of what I'm going to do, and then I go do it.
Oh, you think and then you act.
That's how I look at it. But what
Okay,
this
actually, it's been proven. To my, actually, I have a degree in neurobiology. And
Okay.
from my study of the studies that have been done, I've come to the conclusion that there's two sorts. There's acting without thinking, and there's acting with thinking. There's preconceived actions, and there's actions that you just do automatically.
right.
Instinctive actions.
Yes.
This can be built into a state of instinctiveness by being repeated so many times that, like when you're driving,
Sure.
and you get somewhere and you don't realize, gosh, I just drove here and I don't remember what I saw along the way.
Right.
Right.
That's
You
a
know
little
what I'm talking about?
different. That's a little different than what they were looking at here. But yes, I understand
What
what
were
you're
they looking at then that was different?
They were looking at conscious action only. Like, I'm telling you to move your finger, and we're going to see what happens in your brain.
Yeah,
And
basically,
so somebody would tell them, move your finger, and then they'd see what happened.
Right.
And what did they see happen?
Go ahead.
What they saw was brain activity occurred prior to brain activity that would be consciousness occurring. So that you have your brain actually starting the action.
Oh,
Then
they
you-
obey a command, which involved like listening, processing in the prefrontal cortex,
Right.
without being aware of it.
Right. The brain.
First, and then they were aware of it second.
Right. It's all in the cerebral cortex was all they were recording, and in the cerebral cortex.
So, in other words, people can be induced to blind obedience. That's really a physiological basis of proving that.
But I guess the question comes in then, once I start to get the conscious awareness to act, it's still before I've acted. So I still have the ability consciously to veto the action.
But that's not true according to the study.
Yes, it is, because you have the brain starts to act on the command. Then you get a conscious awareness of the action that's going to happen, and then the act is done.
Oh, so in other words, you do have a choice.
Well, yeah, you have a choice to veto something that's already started.
So it's like if there's a precept, say, in Christianity, that your faith is that God has commanded man to rule the earth or whatever. Or in Islam, God has commanded, or Allah has commanded jihad.
Okay.
You can't really use the excuse that a lot of them do that. Well, God commands it, and it's my belief, therefore I must do it.
That's a little bit of a different thing, because I don't think they would say that I don't think that they're saying that they physically have no choice. I think they would be saying they're making the right choice by joining in and doing this thing.
Well, they're saying according to the belief that Allah has commanded it, and it is the truth. And
Right.
Therefore, since that is their belief, that they must obey.
But I don't think they would say they have no free will. I would say they would say they're doing the
you're
right
talking
thing.
about their free will.
Well, it doesn't tie in with the consciousness study that Tracie was citing. That is basically, it's as if they put a light bulb on and your finger has to hit a button. The analyzing the pathways and what goes on in the brain, you may have, for example, this idea that it comes up here and your brain does all this processing and then sends the signal to do something. And in actuality, what they discovered is that the light goes on and you start to do something, which a process that you can then review and either cancel or allow to proceed. And we're talking about
particular situation that they were in only, right? In that they were being said.
right. But what we're talking about
finger.
what we're talking about with regard to this experiment
Yes.
is almost reaction type stuff. What you're talking about whether or not
It's
somebody's
choice.
going to bomb somebody because Allah has commanded it. That
No,
isn't-
actually, I am talking about the reaction.
No, you asked a second ago if they could use this type of thing as sort of an excuse to say that Allah has commanded it. That, if you were to say Allah commanded it, that's very different than responding to a light and determining whether or not your finger is going to touch it.
Oh, so-
That is an actual conscious process where you have thought about your actions and you then take actions. These things are often planned out weeks or months in advance. It's not like pushing a button when a light goes off. It would be like, you couldn't walk into court after having stabbed your wife to death and say and bring up this study and say, see here, it was an automatic reaction that I just failed to stop. The two
In
are
other words,
comparable.
you're saying you always have a choice.
Yes,
Yeah.
even if that choice is simply to veto.
And your choice could be wrong. And say,
Sure.
like, your concept of evil, you might think, well, this isn't evil because I am a nihilist or a Buddhist or whatever
Sure.
religion you might happen to profess to.
Right.
And your concept of it and say, well, this isn't evil because evil isn't really a material thing, reality. It's a concept that I decide, and if I'm Christian, that's already decided for me, etc.
Right.
So really, what it comes down to, if you're realist or a materialist, nothing is inherently evil.
Correct.
But you said yourself that you had experienced situations where you just thought, well, no matter what I think or believe or whatever, this is definitely evil. You know, or you felt.
I didn't say I have done that.
I
You
said
felt
that.
like it
I
was
said
evil.
I said that,
Oh,
and
I'm
it's
sorry, you said.
I said that, and it's because that's the way society works. It's a
But
limitation.
not because of your own personal
No.
reaction.
I'm saying it. Okay. There's two levels here. I'm not saying something's intrinsically evil, but
That nothing is? Is that what you're saying, that nothing is intrinsically evil?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that
Oh,
nothing
I'm
is
sorry.
intrinsically evil. That
I'm sorry.
very well may be the case. I don't know. I don't.
Good qualification, go ahead.
I don't see how something could be
Right.
intrinsically evil.
Well, evil has to be
Anything?
defined
Evil.
first.
I don't see how anything could be intrinsically evil in and of itself. But that's.
Not even,
Can
not
I
even,
finish? Hang on. Don't make me put you on hold.
I'm
Because
sorry.
The thing is that when you say something like that, somebody wants to jump in immediately with anything. Well, how can you say that about such and such?
Yeah.
I have perceptions
Right.
of things that I clearly define. I think slavery is evil all the time, full stop, 100%.
Okay.
It was evil when the Israelites sanctioned it in their holy book.
I agree.
They just didn't think so. They
I
thought it
agree.
was to their advantage, and I happen to think that it is evil. But slavery, in and of itself, isn't intrinsically evil because
Right.
slavery is just a concept.
Right.
Slavery is a label that we put on a condition, and that condition was beneficial to one and harmful to another. And I would say that you could make a good case that it was harmful to everybody because it promotes other things. But
Right.
this is a
Oh.
huge, complex situation. And the thing is that when I look around and say that I see things that I can easily label evil and good
Yeah.
or better and worse, it's because I
the
have
reasons.
my own moral and ethical code, and it's not this idea of individual moral relativism, although I do feel that situations, that you can have situational ethics for many things. The way society's built is, for example, I think I'd rather people not steal my stuff. I'd rather people not kill me. So I start to hang out with other people who don't want their stuff stolen and don't
Right
want to
on.
be killed. And we begin to form a society that way. That
Right.
that kind of relates more to how laws and societies are structured.
exactly, I understand with you.
But the thing is that the two are interdependent, because as these societies form and continue to reproduce, it's sort of a not really natural selection, but an artificial selection, where
Exactly.
we continue to produce more and more people who
Yeah.
share similar moral values.
Of
Now, there's
course, because they do better material, et cetera,
Right.
in the
There's still
particular
just
community, yeah.
representations of brain chemistry and nature and nurture. But we've produced people who share similar values. But that
Well,
doesn't
of
mean
course.
that's completely different from stating that something is intrinsically evil. And if I go and make a statement like I did before, that I don't see any good reason to call anything intrinsically evil, that's exactly what I mean. That doesn't mean I'm not willing to label things as evil. If somebody comes up and tries to tell me that rape is good, they're just wrong. There's no two ways about it. They
According
are
to
just
you.
wrong. Yes, according to me.
that's
And anybody who
because you have
doesn't
decided that.
agree is also wrong, because I'm the one making the assessment in this case.
Exactly. What I'm saying is that don't you ever have a gut reaction to something you say? See that you then say that's evil, not having thought about it beforehand.
I don't know that I've seen anything that I hadn't. I don't know if I can come up with an example. For
Well,
that.
how are you defining evil?
Well, when you see like you hear about someone killing 14 children who he kidnapped.
No, I don't want an example. I want a definition. How are you?
what's
How do you
evil?
define it? Yeah.
Evil is anything that takes advantage of innocence.
Okay, now see, I would look at evil.
Or ignorance.
If I was going to label, like, I kind of look at it, most time when people say evil, they're saying, do you feel anything is wrong? Like a wrong action.
Yeah.
And that can go a gamut for me, from shutting the door behind me without checking to see if somebody else is coming in. I think that's wrong. I wouldn't call it evil, but I don't
Well,
think
exactly.
it's right. But at the same time, you have things like,
But slamming the door in their face,
is it evil though?
it's
wrong.
I think it's a spectrum.
Right.
If you
But things
take
are more
Right.
right,
my
more wrong.
answer,
But-
please, just I'll just say one sentence and I'll hang up.
Okay.
Is that my answer to that is evil to me is anything that takes advantage of innocence.
And I look at it as harming someone whether they're innocent or not. Like doing harm. You know, to me that's what I guess things that I look at and say this is a violation is when I see people being harmed. Like harm being done to someone. And to me
Or what
it's,
about animals being harmed?
Well,
that bothers me too on different
Yeah,
levels.
things that in other words, you're taking advantage of the innocence or helplessness or ignorance of that particular
But
thing.
I mean, for example, it bothers me to see lions kill an antelope, but I don't consider
That's
it
not
evil.
evil.
Right.
Right.
That's my point.
but it would definitely qualify as taking advantage of, some
Bob,
deficiency.
what I'm saying, what my definition to qualify is conscious taking advantage.
I'm pretty sure
of
the
the
lion's
innocence.
conscious of the fact that he's
They're
killing.
aware.
Yeah, awareness of the fact that you're doing it to take advantage of. That's to me what evil is.
Okay. Anyway, we got other callers on the
All
line.
right,
and
thanks.
Appreciate it.
Like
Thanks,
the
Thank
show.
you.
Bye.
Yeah, they're still having some quality problems with the phone line,
phones.
so hopefully we'll get that corrected. I apologize to anybody who couldn't understand it. It's out of our control. So, John, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Well, I turned my TV off, so I can.
I can hear you
it's
just
kinda
fine.
Erratic.
We'll
Yeah,
hope that it
sounds
was
great.
Grant's problem.
No, it's all right. Look, I'm a Christian, and I just had a question for both of you. I'm not going to rationalize or just put down either one of you. Don't you ever think that there's something, a higher power?
Define higher power.
That's something, well, how we evolution, how we got where we were?
I wouldn't call evolution a higher power. And that's just the natural order. That's things following the laws of nature.
But if you're defining higher power as evolution, then yes, I believe in a higher power.
Yeah, I mean, if you say that evolution's a higher power, sure. And I guess we can include gravity too. I mean, as long as we're talking
Yeah.
about observed facts.
I definitely can't get past gravity.
Okay, well, no, I did my little stuff with the military and other things. Within my life, and I dealt with a lot of people, and I'm just. It's the first time I've called in on this program.
Sure.
Okay. Take
I'm
your
just
time,
trying-
take a deep breath, and get your thoughts together.
And
I certainly recognize that as humans, we all do kind of seek answers to mysteries. We are intensely curious about the nature of things. What happens after I die? Who am I? Why am I here? In a way, we're talking about
Right.
this a little bit with consciousness. And I definitely recognize that we seem to have this passion for, as we mentioned before, attributing significance to things. And when we don't have a good answer, and things, the uncomfortable nature of not having a good answer to a really good mystery, we're prone to injecting some explanation, whether it's justified or not.
well, don't you think every once in a while in your heart, and
I don't think in my heart. We had this discussion last week. I realize you're probably.
this is the first time I called, so
I know. I was
Okay.
going to correct that too. I only said that because this came up as an amusement last week. When I assume you're being metaphorical.
trying to.
Yeah. So when you say you don't think in your heart, you're talking about a specific type of thinking.
Well, I mean, I just heard you earlier, and you're about ethical and your values and everything, and when a person grows up in life and something that they believe in and something that they, it's kind of an experience that every once in a while, I mean, you can feel it. I believe in my heart and soul. I believe in, I'm sorry, God and Jesus Christ. I'm sorry.
You don't have to apologize. I walked down an aisle at a revival at the age of 5. I rededicated my life in my teens and served in the ministry. I was studying to be a preacher. Was raised primarily Southern Baptist, but was non-denominational towards the end, and was studying to be a preacher in order to lead other people to Jesus. When I realized that there was no good reason to support those things that I believed, that I had in fact accepted propositions without good reason, and that there were perhaps good explanations for many of the things that I had used to justify my belief in a God. You've perhaps been in church, maybe singing a hymn with everybody else, and you kind of get goosebumps and attribute it to the Holy Spirit.
Yes,
Yeah,
well, but
okay.
the thing, I'm non-denomination myself.
That's fine.
I don't care what religion you are, but
My
I have
point-
my belief, and I don't just like that. That's why I called here. I mean, if people don't believe, everyone has the right.
Oh,
And,
no, I fully support your right to believe whatever you want. I would just prefer that you didn't. I mean, it's kind of much the same way that,
that right there. You would prefer I didn't?
yes,
Why?
because I think you are deluding yourself and potentially doing harm. That you've accepted a proposition which poisons your thinking. This idea that faith is a good justification or good reason for accepting things, that you can distinguish between fact and fantasy based on gut feelings, wishful thinking.
Well,
hope.
didn't David Branch do the same thing when
Didn't who? What?
the Branch Davidians, David, do the
No.
same thing with his people?
Oh, what? Do what? Do what?
Do the same thing as what?
No. I mean, he thought he was God.
I don't think I'm God.
No, not you, but the Branch Davidian.
David Koresh made claims like that, yeah.
Yeah, and look what happened.
Okay, so how's that relevant to what we're talking about?
Well, no, I'm just saying.
Well, I think it's relevant because the people had faith.
I mean, yeah, all those people believed for really bad reasons, and now they're dead.
Right.
Just like the Jonestown people. But I'm not saying that's what happens
I know
normally.
Jonestown too. Yeah, I know.
I'm not saying that's what happens normally. What I'm saying is that I used to believe these things, and as we're talking about like feeling goosebumps, you may attribute it to the Holy Spirit. I know plenty of people do. I did. And what I later found out is that, you know what, I can get that exact same feeling from music that the church might frown on, that God or Jesus might frown on,
Well, can I ask
and
you
that there are really good explanations for phenomena like that.
Well-
And in the cases where there aren't explanations, there's no justification for making one up.
Just one other question here.
Sure.
I mean, the music that you just said, and look, I like old rock and roll and the Beach Boys. I mean, I'm into the old rock and roll, Beach Boys, Danny and the Juniors, the Rolling Stones, and all that stuff. But you said your kind of music. What's your kind of music? I'm sorry, this is a brand new experience for me here. I'm just.
No, it's fine.
Oh, you don't mean like atheist music.
I'm not talking about atheist music.
He's just talking about his personal choices in music.
Have you ever cried at a film?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I remember when old
Art?
Diller died, and I cried.
Art
I did too.
art can have an emotional effect on people. I mean, that's the whole reason I think
Yeah.
we have art in the first place, is to inspire some kind of emotional effect. So the fact that you happen to misattribute the source of that emotional effect and claim that, oh, it must be God. Because it happened in church, it must be God.
No, that's not with me. And I was going to ask the lady
Okay.
right next to you, that real nice lady. And you're a nice man. I'm not putting anyone down.
No, that's fine.
I was going to ask you, have you ever in your life believed in God or Jesus Christ?
Yeah, I was baptized Church of Christ.
And I was just wondering, I don't know, it just, like I said, I won't waste your time anymore here. I just, I've had a very good, look, I dealt with soldiers. I was military. I mean, Vietnam POWs. And,
Matt was Navy.
huh?
Matt was
yeah,
Navy.
but I wasn't.
No, he wasn't in Vietnam, but he was Navy.
No, I was Army. I belonged to a group, search and rescue missions,
Right.
Army.
And there's something about that leads to your belief in God?
Oh, yeah.
How so?
Because there's a lot of us when they made it, well, not me, but you have to have faith in life when you get on the bottom of the barrel.
Why? No, hang on. Hang on. I agree that it's good to have hope, to keep your spirits up, to hope for something, to stay positive and not get negative. But faith, I'm talking, you know, in the way that you're using it, you're kind of implying that you, when you're at your lowest, that there are no atheists in foxholes, or that when you're in a bad spot, you can't get through it without a reliance on or belief in God.
No, sir. It's misconstrued. I volunteered for search and rescue missions for Vietnam POWs. I was the only group in the United States that we did this. And you go in, it's a one-way trip. And you sign your will, and you make...
It may be a one-way trip. Obviously it wasn't. You went on...
No, I never went on one.
And they're all one-way trips? Nobody comes back?
No, no, that's not what I meant.
So it's possible that it's a one-way trip?
Yes.
Okay. I'm with you. And I applaud those people who are willing to risk their lives for others.
Well, anyway, I'm still kind of I'm still kind of confused about the program here. It's the first time I've called in, and but I do appreciate your time and the nice lady next to you, and you seem like a nice man too.
I do fake being nice on occasion. No, seriously, we have got other callers, and I appreciate your call, and we're going to let you go. But feel free to email tv@atheist-community.org. You know, maybe you can come up with a better way of explaining, because, you know, both of us used to believe, and no longer do.
Well, no, the guy, the last caller, real quick, I mean, he's going through this nonsense, and he's full of it. I just say that.
I don't know where I see that he was full of it.
Well, no, just his ideology and everything. And anyway, I just wanted to call in, and I'm not a psychologist. I used to work, besides that, I work for politicians most of my life. I'm 43, so I mostly work for politicians besides military.
I'm mostly, my area of curiosity is about, you have a belief in a God, and obviously, you know, we haven't really kind of come to the core issue as to what justifies that. So if you have a good explanation for your belief, I'd love to hear it. If, however, it's kind of a comfortable feeling thing or a just take it on faith thing, that's fine. You know, I don't mean to be, you know, snide or condescending or anything. If it's good for you, go for it. I just happen to think that there is actually a consistent reality.
Okay.
And that it's in all of our best interests to discover what that is. And that believing something just because it feels good or you think it's right, especially something that's extravagant, supernatural, and contradictory to what we know about reality, I just think there really needs to be a better justification for that than, you know, everybody's got to have faith.
Hey, I appreciate your opinion. I respect your opinion and that nice lady next to you. And thank you for taking my phone call.
Sure. Thanks, John.
Thanks for calling.
We got, we've only got like 15 minutes left, and we still haven't gotten to the drugs.
We'll just save it.
Still haven't gotten to the drugs. That didn't come off quite the way I meant. But we've got, is it Wendell?
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Did the young lady there say she was Church of Christ?
Yep.
Used to be, yes.
Yes, me too.
My condolences.
Congratulations.
I am not at all religious.
Used to be.
And, but I do believe that, you know, there is a whole lot of unanswered questions out there, you know.
Sure.
In an infinite universe, there are an infinite number of possibilities, I believe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
you're talking about eternity to eternity. I mean, you know, nothing will ever quite disappear, and nothing will ever get so big that it won't exist anymore. If that makes any sense whatsoever.
I think I'm with you. I'm just a little nervous about where you're going.
Oh, well. I was reading in Time magazine a while back that it said there was a proposition put forth about the brain, and it said, do you exist? and then it said, prove it. You know, and I'm going, you know, is there such a thing as, is all of our consciousness, is everything that we think that we are, everything that we believe that is the me, just an illusion, and is it just a bunch of, you know, synapses firing off in our brain to create the illusion of consciousness?
I'm not really big on philosophy, but one of the things that I do agree with is I think, therefore I am. I don't know, I can't prove that what I think I am is what I am, but I can understand internally that there is something I'm labeling I. Now, what that is open for, you know, scrutiny.
The question itself is kind of wrong on a couple counts. One is this notion of prove it. Gosh, we hear that all the time. You can't prove there's no God. You can't prove this. Now, proof isn't the issue. Scientists, why do I keep doing that? Science doesn't prove things. It describes things. It comes up with models that describe the universe. This notion of proving things kind of depends on another red herring, which is this idea of absolute certainty. What I actually am, what the I and I actually am, I don't know. We have some pretty good explanations. There's an idea that consciousness is an emergent phenomenon of the brain, much like wetness is an emergent phenomenon in water. You know, when hydrogen and oxygen molecules get together, or atoms get together to form water molecules. There we go. See, I got this scientist over in the corner who keeps glaring at me when I do things like that. But the inability to properly and completely explain it doesn't change the fact that I absolutely experience it.
Yeah.
And for me, that's like Tracie was saying. You know, Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am. That's where you have to start.
Yeah.
Now, doesn't mean we can't investigate what's beyond that. I think we definitely can, and we do. I think it's a worthy pursuit. And if someday we find out that, for example, we're completely wrong, let's say we find out that that reality doesn't exist. Well, let's not go that far. Let's just say we find out that our consciousness is nothing more than an emergent phenomenon. There is no us. There is no controlling element. That it's all just an illusion. That is atoms going through precise movements dictated by the laws of physics, that there's no free will, that there's no such thing as consciousness, everything else. What does that change?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
Either I'm doing it because I feel like I want to do it, or I'm doing it and it's beyond my control. Either way, there's nothing I can do about it. I prefer to look at it as if I'm doing this because I want to do it, because then I'm actually learning something, I exist, and I can change what I may want to do in the future.
Then you get into the whole question of morality. You know, it's just like I think Dick Cheney is a psychopath. You know, he's a murdering psychopath. You know, but then today I go outside, I take my dogs outside, and there's this little baby bird hopping across the lawn, and my dog runs up and chews it to death. You know, and is my dog a psychopath? No. He's not a psychopath. She's just doing what is natural for her as an animal.
Right.
You know, just to kill the little baby bird, and she dug a hole and buried it.
But do you think you could?
Reference.
Do you think you could teach your dog not to do that?
Yeah, it'd be crazy for my dog not to do that. And so we get into the questions of, you know, do we exist? And if we do exist, are there questions of morality? And what is morality? And then what is it? You know, are they you know, absolutes? Or are they just things that we've just dreamed up in our minds?
I define
are
morality.
you asking?
Yeah, I define morality simply as whatever the individual feels is correct or incorrect behavior, to the degree that they want to call it, you know, evil or simply impropriety. That's up to them. But it's, if you, for example, don't see something as wrong, I can't impose morality from outside of you. I can impose your behaviors on you. I can lock you up or something, but I can't make you feel like something's wrong. That's your personal morality.
It's much the same way that the idea that belief isn't subject to the will, that I can't. Lots of people claim you can, and some people certainly try to, but I cannot make myself believe something. Belief is simply accepting something as true. And in order for that to happen, you have to have been convinced. Now, there may be many ways to convince people, There may be notions of brainwashing and other things to where you force them to accept a proposition without good reason. But Pascal's wagers presented a lot of times where, if I'm right and you're going to hell, and if you're right, nothing happens to either one of us, so isn't it better to believe? Well, even if that were true, and it's not, there's about 1 billion reasons why Pascal's wager's wrong. Even if it were true, I still couldn't just force myself to believe. It's not like I could say, you know what? If you're right and I'm going to hell, then it really is better for me to believe. Hallelujah, praise Jesus, I believe. It wouldn't work that way. You
That's
couldn't
right.
possibly make yourself believe.
That's
Although
where
I
I'm
think
at.
that may be...
I can't believe in religion. I mean, it just seems so illogical. I mean, that a God would sentence someone to eternity in hell is just so absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and not everybody believes that. Not even all Christians.
I can't believe that. I can't believe if he loves us that much, would he do that to us just because we screwed up for 50 or 60 years?
Well, the God that's portrayed in the Bible is just one of the most obnoxious, vile.
I do believe there are
spoiled brats I've
probably
ever heard of.
intelligences in the universe more intelligent than us that
I would hope so, but we don't know.
we don't know for sure. But
It seems possible that might have happened at some point.
the whole issue of morality and the whole issue of existence and the whole issue of everything, I think we're just now reaching a point to where we can question some of those things.
Yeah. I agree. I think and we've only been really studying consciousness for a few
The
years.
40s and 50s, I think,
Yeah.
is when they started.
So I mean, it's just now that like we talked about earlier, we don't have a good language to describe these things. Hell, it's just now recently that we've actually started to get a handle on how we're going to go about investigating them. And certainly, if that's the case, if we're just now starting to really, really dig below the surface, and we're still trying to develop the language to do it, then any assertions about the reality of it that come from several thousand years ago, I think they're a little questionable. I mean, unless you believe that they had some secret special insight, that in fact there is some divine being who put the whammy on them and told them what was what. Their conclusions are suspect at best. But we only got a few minutes left in the show.
We lost
I got
a
it.
caller.
Oh, we did.
Oh,
But we can read a little bit.
We lost a caller.
Is this the end of the show?
We're on
Almost.
from 3 to 4:30 now. But thanks for reminding me. The show had
All
to
right.
move. I think for public access. Now we're on from 3 to 4:30 every Sunday, at least for the next 4 months or so. And this should be the new permanent home. So
Well, it's nice talking to you guys.
thank you very much. Wendell, appreciate the call.
Bye-bye.
So we didn't quite get. Well, we've got a few minutes. I don't know
Yeah,
how long
yeah.
it'll take for the drug thing.
I probably can't get through all the drug descriptions, but I did want to look at an article on ego death and the psychoactive experience in general. So this is ego death according to drug use. And I couldn't help but be struck by the parallels between religion and psychoactive drug use in the descriptions in the article. And this is just a couple of quotes, and I mean, I think you'll see the parallels immediately. It says, the effects become more powerful and may additionally include reports of perceptions of dimensional distortion, hearing voices, significant open and closed eye visuals, reports of experiencing alternate realities, out-of-body experiences, visiting parallel universes, as well as perceived contact with beings or entities, disillusion of one's ego, and life-changing experiences. And to me, all of that just it's such religious language. It then says, and this is also just struck me as extremely telling, many feel compelled to communicate the details of their experiences to a wider audience, as evidenced by the numerous reports posted on the internet on various websites and forums, as well as such first-hand phenomenological accounts. Some may go on and write more extensive prose or poetry. So it's inspirational to these people to the point that they want to go and share the experience with others and tell them about it, and that also inspires them personally to go on and do creative things as a result of this experience that they had.
Yeah.
And it just very much parallels religion. And when I go into the descriptions later, what it shows is a difficulty in expressing it in regular language.
So you think we're going to continue with drug use and consciousness next
We
month?
might.
We might. You did a really good series that a lot of people have talked about, covering like the henotheistic, polytheistic traditions that kind of underlie Judaism. and somebody was looking to try and get all those on MP3. And as a reminder, the audio portion of this program is available as a downloadable podcast. The video portion is now up on Google Video. There's also DVDs of the video available at the website, including some compilation DVDs of the audio. So you can get an audio DVD disc for like all of the 2004 season or all the 2005 season, and we'll continue along those lines as long as the word's getting out and people are interested. I want to touch on one thing real quick before we go. We got just a couple minutes left. There was one caller on the line who hung up, probably anticipating we weren't going to get to him. And the point, as relayed from the studio, was that if morality is not intrinsic, then it doesn't matter. And I don't know if that person was agreeing with what I'm getting ready to say or not, because I didn't quite get the context of what they're saying. I'd say that whether or not morality is intrinsic, I hate to make an assumption about which way they're going on this, but is largely irrelevant. If, for example, your position is that if morality is not something that is intrinsically true, then it doesn't matter what we do. That I see as a problem. I would reply, first of all, if morality is not intrinsically true, then God is irrelevant. You can go to Youth for a Project. We probably don't still have the Youth for a Project site up there. You can look up the Youth for a dilemma and find out why that is. Because there's a couple of options, and one is that God says something because it is intrinsically moral, or God says something and it becomes intrinsically moral. God's saying it because it's true, or God's saying it makes it true. If, in fact, that you're saying that it's not intrinsic, then you've got this sort of divine edict, and morality changes on a whim of a controlling, governing deity, instead of what we know to be true, which is that morality shifts itself around based on changes in society. We've seen this all over the place, including in religion itself. Christianity today isn't what it was 50 years ago. It's not what it was 100 years ago. It's not what it was 1,000 years ago. And we're mostly thankful for that. We're mostly thankful that you stopped burning people at the stake, that you stopped torturing people, that you stopped sanctioning killing people for being rude or picking up sticks on Sunday. And now we wish that you'd probably get rid of the rest of the crap. Stop tossing out the Old Testament when it's convenient and toss it out altogether. Stop relying on the feel-good passages of the New Testament and realize that in doing so, you're supporting other passages that are just obscene. That you don't need a God to define morality to you, and even if a God did define morality, that doesn't say anything about whether or not something's right. It's a list of rules. We'll see you all next week. We'll be on again from 3 to 4:30. Thanks for calling and tuning in. Have a good week.